Hello, everyone. It's been a while since I've talked to you. I hope you're doing well. I hope things are not too overwhelming. Right now, the first three chapters are overwhelming. I won't pretend they're not. They are, right? So there's a lot of vocabulary, and you guys are focusing on that. Okay, fine. It's hard. It takes a lot of drill and kill. You got to practice, 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 like I was saying over and over again. Okay, once you get those prefixes, suffixes, those roots, then when we continue in the semester, it should be getting easier and easier because you can apply what you've learned and then we're applying it to the organ systems. Okay, so I've had the publisher's stuff and the publisher's PowerPoints. I do have narrated PowerPoints for this chapter also, but I want to give you my spin, okay, on stuff you should focus on if you've never had this before. Also, I have a test review, a study guide. I created a new page that says study guide. So please look at that. If you're like, what should I focus on? What should I focus on? That will help you knowing what to focus on. Of course, the homework is review. It's drill and kill. The activities you've been doing on my lab, same thing. So if you have that stuff down, and again, it's review, 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 flashcards would be very helpful. Then again, this is probably going to be the hardest test. Then it should be getting easier. Okay. So chapter 4, same thing. Make sure you're focusing on the tables, okay? But now before we get into the organ systems, we're going to look at organization of the body, and that's what chapter 4 is about. So if we look, it's really helpful to look at the learning outcomes. You're like, okay, what's this chapter about? What should I focus on? So define terms that describe the body, structural units, the systems of the body, terms used for directional planes, word analysis, head-toe assessment. If you've ever worked in the medical field, you hear about head to toe a lot. How do you assess a patient? Recognize terminology in ICD-10. Now this, you guys, in the previous chapters, I said you don't have to worry about it. As we go, then we're going to focus on it, like with every organ system. Analyze, build, spell, pronounce medical words. That's what we've been doing so far. Drugs. So they're starting now talking about drugs because this is medical terminology. What are drugs? And then some abbreviation. So those are the learning outcomes for this chapter. Okay. All right. So anatomy and physiology, what are they? Anatomy is describing the body structure. Physiology is talking about body function. And the two disciplines go hand in hand. It's like a marriage. Anatomy, structure, physiology, function. And really what we see is structure and function go together. Okay. All right. So here, this is a pretty important slide. Okay. It's showing you how is the body put together. Now, this is not an anatomy class. This is not a physiology class, right? It's medical terminology. But if you have something in context, then it makes it easier to remember the words, okay? So we're giving you some basics, some fundamentals in anatomy and physiology. Okay, so levels of structural organization. So if we look down here, it says atoms, okay? So all things are made out of atoms, right? Whether they're alive or not alive, they're made out of atoms. So carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, nitrogen, copper, gold, etc., etc. So atoms are not alive. Now, atoms combine to make molecules, okay? So water, carbohydrates, lipids, those are molecules. Those are not alive either. Then the molecules make organelles, right? Organelles, that means tiny organ. They're not alive either. And it's not until we get to cells, right? Cells are alive, okay? So the body works on the cellular level, okay? But we are multicellular. So we're made out of many cells, okay? So in reality, you get a bunch of cells, similar types of cells. Now we have a tissue, okay? So cells get together, similar types of cells. Now we have a tissue. In the body, there are 4 types of tissue. That's going to be a slide that comes up. So epithelial, so like skin, surrounding organs, right, epithelial tissue. There are muscular tissue. There's connective tissue. So like blood and bone is considered connective tissue. And then there's nervous tissue. Tissue, okay, so cells are alive, okay? A bunch of the similar types of cells, you have tissue, okay? So here it says epithelial tissue, okay? Epithelial, nervous, muscle, connective. So it's giving you the 4 types. Then tissues, put different types of tissues together, you get an organ. So like, for example, what's this organ? The lung, right? So this organ is made out of different tissues that together have a specific function, okay? So the lungs, the liver, the kidneys, bone, right? Bone is an organ. Blood, actually blood vessels, the heart, blood vessel. Actually blood vessels are an organ because they're made out of more than one tissue. Now, get different organs that together have a specific function. You have an organ system. So the lungs, right? The trachea, the bronchi, the alveoli, all of that together, they have an organ system. So the respiratory system. And the body itself is made out of organ systems. So respiratory is one, cardiovascular, muscular, nervous system, epithelial system, etc. And all together, you put all those organ systems together, you have the whole organism. So this is an important slide because it says levels of organization from the smallest to the largest, right? Where atoms and molecules are not alive or organelles. And then we get to the cell is alive. And now cells are formed into tissues that are formed into organs, organ systems, a bunch of organ systems. You have the whole organism, okay? So this is an important slide because it puts together the body and parts of the body from the smallest to the largest. So talks about atoms, smallest. So here, every slide here is talking about those parts, right? So atoms have protons and neutrons, and then electrons around them. Chemical elements. Okay, so here shows the different elements found in the body. The major ones, the bulk of them are carbon, oxygen, hydrogen, and nitrogen. Like 96% of the body is made out of carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, nitrogen. The rest are found in very small, minute amounts. Now, in the body, we can see atoms by themselves. We can see ions, but atoms will combine to make molecules, okay? So it says 2 or more atoms combined, that's a molecule. So, for example, water, H2O is a molecule. Carbohydrates, we're talking about sugars, molecules. Lipids, we're talking about fats. Proteins, nucleic acids. So in reality, we can find atoms in the body, we can find molecules in the body. And then here, we get to cells. So cells are alive. The basic building blocks of various structures, right? Specialized. Size, shape of the cell are generally related to its function. So here's that anatomy and physiology coming together. Now, this is a really nice picture. Not all cells look like this, right? This is a typical, model cell. Like if you look in a magazine and you see a model, right? Here, we're looking in the book and here's this model cell. But in reality, cells in the body look different, okay? They have things that are similar. So like all cells have a cell membrane. All cells have the internal area, the cytoplasm. All cells have organelles. But like this is a nerve cell and its structure has to do with its function. So nerve cells have to do with communication. So you see these extensions, right, to communicate. Versus like look, this is a fat cell, adipocyte, excuse me. And fat cells store fat, so you see these huge vacuoles that they store fat. Versus this is a muscle cell, and muscle cells are really long, right? And muscle cells contract for movement. Versus here's some connective tissue cells versus a bone cell versus another type of nerve cell. So cells look different, right? And their structure has to do with their function. Okay. So here is a typical model cell showing you the parts of the cell. So the cytoplasm here is on the outside. The nucleus is on the inside. The nucleus has the DNA. That's the genetic material, right? All the hereditary material. Now the organelles, the word organelle means tiny organ. They have specific jobs. So like the mitochondria. Now in the review sheet, the study guide, I told you guys there's a table in the book, and I said, know the name and the function. All right. So mitochondrion, that has to do with energy, right, for the cell. So here, cytoplasm, that's the internal part of the cell. Lysosome, lice, think of Lysol. They break stuff down. They're like the janitorial crew. Here is the rough endoplasmic reticulum. That has to do with protein synthesis. Here is the Golgi body. That has to do with storing and packaging stuff. So it could be used later or it could be shipped off. Ribosome, proteins for protein synthesis. Smooth endoplasmic reticulum, that has to do with storing calcium. That has to do with fat metabolism. Centrioles, those are protein filaments that has to do with movement, with cellular reproduction. So this is a typical cell, and I'm going really quickly because this is just an overview, right? Because cells are so important because we're functioning on a cellular level. So if you know what a cell is and kind of the parts of the cell, and know that bone is working on the cellular level, blood, there are blood cells. Muscle working on the cellular level, connective tissue, so elastic connective tissue, right? Cartilage is working on the cellular level, cardiac cellular level, nervous system, there are nerve cells. So knowing the typical, anatomy of a cell is important. Cell membrane, cytoplasm, nucleus, right? So stem cells, those are cells that can bring about future cells, right? It says unspecialized, give rise to specialized cell types, can now be grown and transformed into specialized cells. So you hear about stem cells, they're really important because they can become different cells. Okay. So here's that table I was talking about. It talks about the structures and their function. And I just want you to get an idea, a generalized idea. Mitochondria, lysosomes, yeah. Okay. Now, so atoms, molecules, cells, now to tissues. So you put a bunch of similar cells, right? Grouping of similar cells together perform specialized functions, and we're talking about tissue. So 4 types of tissue. Epithelial is one. Outer surfaces, so skin, lining cavities, so inside of the blood vessels, inside of the bladder, let's say, inside of the lungs, inside of the uterus, right? Yeah. Epithelial. Okay, 6 main functions of epithelial. So here they are: protection, sensation, secretion. So in your skin, secretion, absorption, like in the intestines, excretion, diffusion, like in the lungs. Okay, I'm going to stop here because I'm limited to 15 minutes, and then I'm going to have the next video.